I think everyone can name a character in media who has such a morally gray area that it's hard to determine if they're actually a good or bad guy. Eren Yeager from Attack on Titan, Marvel's Tony Stark, and Gon Freaks from Hunter x Hunter are some examples from popular media that you probably recognize based on name alone. They're everywhere in the media if you look in the right places, and right now, where better to look than Apex Legends with the release of a new season. What's good, skin suits and simulacra? My name's Schlorpa, and this week I'm going to bring you my based opinions on the philosophy and actions of Revenant from Apex Legends. More specifically, I'm going to go over Revenant's role in the murder of Marcos and Alanza Andrade. I know, this is totally out of left field. In fact, I haven't made a single video about Apex Legends, and yet here I am talking about a character I never play. But he's beefing with my main girly Loba, so it's time I set the record straight. I thought it would be an interesting discussion to talk about my thoughts on who's in the right for this whole situation. So without further ado, we're going back in time to show Revenant 21 Jump Street to stop him from killing Loba's parents. That's right, we're going back in time to show Revenant 21 Jump Street to stop him from killing Loba's parents. Revenant, also known in the past as Caleb Cross, is a legend in the Apex games released with Season 4 of the game. Born in 2356, somewhere in the Outlands, Cross was known as the best assassin the Mercenary Syndicate had employed in its history. Due to his lack of morals, Cross had no issue killing people and completing contracts, his first victim supposedly being his own father. After a man named Bob Woods was targeted by the Syndicate, it was Cross's job to eliminate him. Cross killed his wife and later his children before being arrested for homicide by the Gaia Global Task Force. Luckily, the Syndicate was able to free him from his imprisonment. Woods plotted to murder Cross in retaliation, poisoning his drink and drowning him. Woods was killed for this, and Cross's body was delivered to the nearest Hammond Robotics facility. Cross's consciousness was soon the latest experiment for Hammond scientists, as they hoped to preserve it. Their first attempts were unsuccessful, but researchers determined that storing the biological remains of his brain separate from the body they were testing could work, and were proven successful. 20 years later, the first ever simulacrum was brought online, and the first ever Revenant was brought online in 2420. Revenant was used as a versatile hitman by the Mercenary Syndicate. He was the perfect assassin, with the capabilities and tendencies of Caleb Cross, yet without the limitations and restrictions of mortality the human body possesses. If he were to die, his consciousness would simply be put in a new body. 2708 was the year Revenant was contracted to kill Marcos Andrade, a notorious thief. During a party of sorts between Marcos and his family at Tenmei, he was able to swiftly dispose of Marcos Andrade as well as his wife and almost all the other patrons in the restaurant, leaving a single survivor. However, during the conflict, a glass shard stuck in Revenant's neck damaged his ego retention system, which was what stopped Revenant from realizing his own lack of humanity. Enraged with this, he swore revenge on the very people who brought him back. Revenant pursued all those in the Mercenary Syndicate, slaughtering one member before going after a Hammond worker who tells him when the operation began, 288 years ago. Knowing all the people responsible for creating and torturing were all long gone, he swore his revenge against all humans. To satiate his bloodlust, the Syndicate officials managed to induct Revenant into the Apex games. So why does Loba have beef with Revenant? Loba, full name Loba Andrade, was born in 2699 to the professional thieves Alanza and Marcos Andrade, and was the sole survivor of the massacre at Tenmei back in 2708. Placed into a new family, Loba filled the emptiness inside her by following in her family's footsteps, becoming a thief. She managed to repress the memory of Revenant until she learned of his involvement in the Apex games. There, she swore her revenge on him and entered the games in Season 5. Yep, Loba's the child of the people Revenant murdered, and she's back for revenge. Her goal was to make Revenant suffer for killing her parents, and she discovered how to do so. Revenant craved death and to finally be put at rest, the only way being for his real head to be destroyed. He wished to be able to live in control of himself and not by other people, this being the only way. Loba, as retaliation, did everything to ensure it stayed alive, keeping Revenant alive as well. This fighting had been happening since Season 5 and Loba's arrival into the games up to the current season, Season 19. After we got a reworked Revenant with Revenant Reborn, we were finally getting a conclusion to the story between the two. And with Kill Code Part 4, we see that both Revenant and Loba change their minds about destroying his head. Loba wants to destroy his source code, and Revenant finally wants to live. So I think it's time for me to ask the question we all want to know my answer to, otherwise why would you click on this video? Was Revenant in the wrong for his actions through the lore? Was he wrong in killing the Andrades? Before we all get into our Civil War conversation, I'm simply talking about the actions of Revenant the Simulacrum, not his actions as Caleb Cross. My honest and simplified answer is no. Revenant was not at fault for the murder of Loba's parents. Well, at least not completely.
But Schlorpa, he literally fisted her dad to death. He's clearly responsible.
Hold on there, cutie patootie, and please allow me to give my college dropout psychoanalysis on a fictional man. Let me pull out my deadly sentencing domain and work my case for the simulacrum. My evidence is purely situational and is kind of a matter of perspective. I think that if you view my points from a different perspective, you'll probably disagree with me. All I'm going to ask is for you to hear me out and respect my perspective as I would yours. Okay, let's get into it. I think the best way to start this argument is with the question of who is Revenant? Which seems weird because I just spent 6 paragraphs explaining who Revenant is. My argument is that Revenant was not a separate entity before the murder of the Andrades. Just look at the cinematic. A loyal machine does his job only to find he's not what he seems to be. Revenant had no control over himself. To understand this accusation, I think the best way to view it is by remembering what Revenant wants most of all. We see it all the time, especially with his interactions with Loba. Revenant yearns for death, to be free of his metal prison and be put to rest by his own terms. And we know how he has to do it, as we see in multiple cinematics. If his source code, his human head, is destroyed, it would kill the links between his flesh and the machines and he would die. Loba Andrade, a woman racked by tragedy at the hands of the monster himself, was the perfect vessel for his plan. She craved revenge on the one who made her suffer, and he wished to die. It was almost the perfect transaction, except Loba figured out what he wanted and decided killing him was too merciful. Using recent evidence from the Cinematic Kill Code Part 4, he actually points out what he wants very vaguely. Eduardo Silva believes Revenant wants control over everything and is a man who wishes to control his destiny and death. However, Revenant responds to his claims with the quote, "I only wanted control over me," before killing Eduardo. This quote infers that he previously had no control over himself. So let's make a large assumption. We can infer Revenant only gained control after the damage to his ego retention system during Season 4's Assimilation launch trailer. After the massacre, Revenant realizes that there's a shard of glass stuck in his neck. When we look at the imagery, we can see that he sees himself as human in the reflection. Pulling the glass out broke the immersion. Besides the damaged part of the machinery, there was no blood or pain when it was removed. The immersion was broken, and at last Revenant saw what he truly was. We know he thought of himself as human, too. While he shaves in the mirror as the first scene in the cinematic, Revenant sees the face of Caleb Cross. We go through his daily routine as Cross, and we even see Cross in the reflection as Revenant scales the building. That immersion breaks, as I mentioned, when he gets damaged in a way fatal towards mortal men. Towards the end of the cinematic, we even see Revenant realizing he was shaving the paint off his metallic skeleton. That moment, looking at the glass, after the massacre, marked the moment Revenant had gained consciousness and the knowledge of what he had become. My biggest piece of evidence to support this lies with the Ronin pilot herself. Ash is also a simulacrum, but as far as we know, she was a willing participant of the process and is actively knowledgeable about being a simulacrum, as it was what she requested after being mortally wounded. This means that simulacra tend to be aware of them not being human anymore. Ash has autonomy over herself. Revenant, however, seems to be the opposite. Ash acted on her own orders during Titanfall 2, and even before during her time as an Apex Predator and contracted mercenary for the IMC and Ares Division, even being chastised by Blisk for toying with the pilot during the Into the Abyss mission, which was against his order to kill Jack Cooper. Quite an interesting piece of information, at least to me. It doesn't help that Revenant and Ash are the only 2 simulacra we've encountered at a personal level in not only Apex, but also the Titanfall games. Yes, there were enemy simulacra specialists in the Titanfall 2 campaign, but that was it. There was nothing personal, at least not until the introduction of Revenant. When discussing Revenant's motives during the murder of the Andrades, we must remember Revenant was contracted by the Syndicate to kill Marcos Andrade. He was hired by a client who was robbed of something important to him by the thief and sought revenge. If it wasn't Revenant the Syndicate ordered to kill Marcos, it would be someone else. Revenant was just the best option to send to ensure he killed Marcos, even with his security. If his vessel died, he would simply return in a new body. He is the option with the high success rate as well as the best chance of survival and completion of the mission. Revenant was just the middleman, doing a job at the request of another person. He held no personal ties to the Andrade family. It was simply business. Revenant pulled the trigger, but he wasn't the one to load the gun. He was responsible for their murder, but not in the way the person who hired him was. That man deserves the most blame. So I do believe Revenant wasn't in control of himself during the Andrade slaughter, only after. I believe this absolves him of most of the blame. If he was akin to a computer running a task, is it the fault of the computer, or rather the fault of the person who told the computer to run it? Yeah, he killed them, but as I said, if not him, then someone else in the syndicate would have done it. They were hired by a man who wanted Marcos dead. Think about it as if it were a modern day situation. If I were to hire a hitman to eliminate a person, called a contract killing, that would be a crime. It is someone hiring a party to do the killing because of the hirer's inability to do so or to dissuade law enforcement from connecting the hirer to the murder. Basically, it's a way to hopefully absolve yourself of any guilt. I am paying for an execution, which is akin to murder even if I didn't lay a hand on the person. So while he does hold a portion of fault for what happened, Revenant isn't the only one with blame, and I believe that he could be considered innocent. If he had no control, no consciousness, during the events, that means he was not a willing participant in the murder. It doesn't matter if he would have done it had he been in control, but rather if he was in control when it happened. He never consented to the mission, and I believe the lack of choice makes him pretty innocent. Loba deserves to be angry. If someone murdered someone I loved right in front of me as a wee lad, yeah, I'd be pretty pissed. And since she's never mentioned the man who hired Revenant, we can assume she thinks it's something he did out of cold malice. His words towards her, goading her with his phrases, even playing into it being out of cold blood, is a way to rile her up and manipulate her emotions to make her kill the simulacrum. So overall, I find that by technicality, Revenant is not guilty. So that's it. All my thoughts on if Revenant is to blame for Loba's parents' deaths. Honestly, I never thought I'd rate this, but all it took was an offhanded comment in the Thornton Smash video to make me throw away my other video idea and start the Apex video grind. And speaking of the Apex grind, you could probably catch me live at twitch.tv/Slurpa playing any variety of FPS games, so feel free to pop in and say hi. We'd love to have you. I enjoyed giving my take on a bit of Revenant's morality. I think it's a great conversation, if I'm being honest. Plus, we basically just finished his lore, so I thought it'd be a good farewell to me ever mentioning this character again. Sorry, Revenant fangirls, I have my own simulacrum I'm down bad for. Anyways, let's give a goodbye to the Loba and Revenant storyline, and hopefully let's say hello to some new crypto lore, as that seems to be the way the lore is heading with the upcoming new map and teasers. And I do hope so, because I'm sick of tired of Loba and the love V that's going on with her, Valkyrie, and Bangalore. But let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. I would love to see your thoughts on the subject. I read every single message and try to respond to as many as I can. Your thoughts and input means a lot to me, and each video helps me learn and grow as a creator. It's thanks to you all that I've made it anywhere on this platform. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like to show me your support. If you want to hear more base takes on things, consider subscribing to the channel. It's free, and you can always undo it later if you decide you hate me. Well, that's all from me. I appreciate you all watching, and I tip my hat to you if you made it this far. Thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, tell someone you love them, and have a fantastic rest of your day.